Hey guys, welcome back to Gotta Be Geek. It's been a couple weeks since we talked to each other, and I apologize for that delay. Sometimes just preparing for certain videos and other personal stuff comes up that makes it a little bit longer, but generally the plan is always going to be to stick to probably about one a week or so, and then 2 weeks if what I'm preparing for takes a little bit longer or there's other personal stuff. So in this case, what I was getting ready for originally, it's not today's video, but originally I was planning on doing a React state management video because I had mentioned that I was going to do that in one of my previous videos, which I'll have a link for either on that side or that side for you to click on in my React tutorial for beginners. And I had mentioned I would do React state management, so that's still in the queue. I'll probably do that for next week, where I'll be talking about the React's context API and comparing it to Redux to decide which one is better, which one's right for you in various situations. But in today's video, I wanted to respond to a comment request in one of my previous videos by a Oot. I'm probably going to slaughter this name, so I apologize. Feel free to correct me on the pronunciation, but I think it's Utpal Anand. And so he asked if I could do a video on C++ and VS Code and how to set it up. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. We're going to go through a tutorial and show how you can get C++ debugging and how to make a C++ application in VS Code. So enough of the chit chat, let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to go through a tutorial that Microsoft actually has specifically on adding C++ support to VS Code so that you can run it and debug it and do whatever you want to do. So I'm going to pull that up here and we'll follow along with this tutorial. So on the left I have VS Code open, and then on the right I have the tutorial that they have for this already. We'll just kind of follow along with this together, and I'll go over any problems or hangups that I run into that may be my own fault or lack of information on the documentation. So we'll kind of see here as we go through it. I've already got a few of the things done myself as I was kind of preparing a bit to do this video and just making sure that everything worked as expected, following along with the latest. I'd installed the C++ extension and some stuff to work with it a little bit in the past, but C++ isn't a very common language that I've used in any of my normal day-to-day stuff. So I haven't really needed it a lot, but again, like I said, I wanted to make sure that following along with the latest documentation would yield the same result for everyone. So I've reinstalled or installed the latest extension, and so you can see here I've already searched for C++ with extensions, and I have that one installed that it says here. And then the next step is to install the compiler, which is mingw-w64 from SourceForge. So you click on that link here and it will take you to the SourceForge website, and it will download our file here in a moment. And we'll click on that. So the first kind of gotcha is that might be kind of easy to gloss over. Whoops, a little consent there. So the first part that might be easy to gloss over is I've highlighted here. It says extract the tools from the compressed file to a folder that has no spaces in its path. So unfortunately, we're still in the day and age where sometimes spaces in our file paths cause issues. So if you click next here in the installation process, I'm going to select the options best for me, but for your computer it may be different. So feel free to look at the mingw documentation or their website for whatever the right architecture and threads option may be best for you. So I've selected the ones that are great for me. So back to our first hang up here is that you'll see it actually fills in program files by default, but the instructions are telling us to make sure that where we store mingw actually has no spaces in it. And so you can see here that it actually assumes you're just going to install it directly into the C drive. So for that reason, we can go ahead and just delete program files and let it just install directly there. I've already installed this myself, so I'm not going to click next because that'll start the installation over. But you can go ahead and click next once you've removed program files from that, and then let it continue. And then once it's done, come back. But we'll go ahead and continue forward, assuming that we've done that, and let it install. So the next piece here is that it wants you to add the mingw bin folder to the path environment variable. So if you're not familiar with what it means to add something to your path environment variable, that's just a basically Windows shortcut to give you access to a bunch of different command line tools or executables so that anytime you have a PowerShell window or command line or whatever open, that you have access to those particular folders and whatever executables or command line tools may be in them. So the steps here for 1 and 2, I think, are kind of a little drawn out, but basically it's telling you to go here and search in the search bar for settings when there's actually a settings button here if you wanted to go that route. And then in the settings search to search for edit environment variables for your account. Really, you can just type in edit environment variables right here in the search bar and you'll get the same thing. So, and then it says to choose the path variable and then select edit. When it says choose the path variable, it's referring, in this case and in most cases, it's referring to this path environment variable, not the system path environment variable. In my experience, it's very rare that you need to edit or mess with the system one. Basically, the difference between them is that the system one's going to affect the entire computer and all users, and the user, obviously, environment variable is going to affect just that user. So in this case, me, if there was somebody else using this computer, then it would not affect them. So in most cases, you should only really ever need to do it to just the user. So we're gonna click on that, and you can see I've already added the one that it says here, this C min GW blah 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 bin folder, right? And so if we follow the instructions and go new and then browse, go to PC, C drive, and then min GW here, and then we go into this x86_64 folder, and then min GW64, and then the bin folder. So we can select that, click OK, and it's the same as what I already have. So I'm just going to delete it, and then you're good on that. So you would click OK. Sorry, I probably should have made that clear. I click cancel because I already had it, but once you selected it, you would click OK so that it saves it. So the next part of that, or the next hang up, I should say, is that what it tells you here is you'll need to reopen any console windows for the new path location to be available. So this is pretty common for any time you add something to your path environment variable. So the problem is that the integrated console that VS Code uses is a bit different than if you were to just open up a terminal for just normal outside of VS Code. So if I were to have this open at the time of adding that to my path environment variable and then closed it and then I reopened this, it would work.
But unfortunately, while this will work, is because of the way VS Code's integrated console works. If you were to just have this the console open in VS Code and you just tried to either kill the terminal or you just tried to exit out of it here, it still wouldn't refresh the terminal the same way it would if we closed this and then reopened it. And so what I found, and this may be just for me, it may not be an issue on your computer, so feel free to just use this as a kind of thing to do if it doesn't seem to be working. But basically, if you come in here to VS Code and you try and type in the command that it says down here, right? So it says check your installation, and you can type in one of these two. And so if we type in g++ -- version, right? So for me, it works right now. But if you type this in and it says something along the lines of this not being a command that it knows, then you're likely running into that problem. So the way that I solved this was to completely close VS Code and restart all the instances that I had open, because at the time I was doing this, I had a couple instances open. So just close all of your instances of VS Code, reopen it, and that seems to be what had fixed it for me. So just be aware that that's something that you'll need to look out for. So moving on to the next part is we're going to be doing the create a hello world part. So there's a few commands here that assume you're still kind of working in the command line to make a directory and then open it up with the code command. I'm not going to do that personally. And then you'll see here that it talks about, and that's because I already have VS Code open and I'm already in the folder that I want my stuff in. So the It tells you here that the folder that you're in is going to be your workspace, and as you go through the tutorial, you'll see the 3 files created in a VS Code folder in the workplace: tasks, launch.json, and we'll get through those as well. So the first thing we're going to follow through is adding the source file here that says hello-world.cpp. hello-world.cpp. And we'll go ahead and just take everything that it says here and we'll copy it in. And so I did hit Control S, just out of habit. I hit Control S and saved it. And then the next part here is to open the file explorer with Control Shift E, but I already have it open. And no, I don't have autosave enabled. And like it says, you can explore IntelliSense, so you can hover over the various things here in the extension. You can see pulls in the different aspects of C++ and allows you to hover over and figure out kind of what these different things are and how they're being used. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty useful in that front. So next step is to build the Hello World app. So it says next we'll create a task.json file to tell VS Code how to build and compile the program. This task will invoke the G++ compiler. So we're going to do what it says. We'll go to terminal here. And then I have this pretty zoomed in, and I have it split half screen here, which is why my extra options up here in the top are now in this little menu, because I've received so much feedback in the past that it's always too small of a text. So I have it pretty big when I do these now to try and make sure you guys can see them. But so you'll click over, you may not need to click on this little ellipsis, so you just click on terminal and then the configure default build task. And then you'll see here it says to select the g++.exe one. So we're going to skip down to that. And then it should just, yep, so it should create it right in the VS Code folder when you do that. And then it tells us what it should look like. And so I'll minimize this so we can see the whole file. And yep, it looks pretty much the same. So we'll move through. The only difference being is a Win32 version, an x86 64, whereas this one is i686 and POSIX. And then we'll move through the rest. So running the build says go back to the Hello World CPP. Your task builds the active file, and you want to build the Hello World CPP. To run it, we're going to do Control Shift B, which runs the default build task. So we'll do that, and we'll do Control Shift B, and we can see now in the terminal here it's running our build command. Okay, so and we can see here that there's some output that they're telling us to look for the that we can do. So we'll close this out and we'll type in dir, like it says, to get the directory up. And we'll minimize this again. And you can see we have the hello world.exe file like it has here. And it looks like the next part here is talking about modifying our task.json. And so there's a couple aspects to this. Is basically, before we go through this, it's telling us what to do, but it's not really explaining probably quite why. So if you're not familiar with how some of these shorthand parameters work, if you pass in file like this to a command in your task.json or in any of the VS Code stuff, this file parameter here is saying the current file that you have open. So if we have this open, right, and we do Control Shift B again, we can see, right, it gives us a hello world.exe. But obviously we're going to have an application at some point that's more than just one C++ file. We want to probably write a bigger application that does something meaningful beyond just writing hello world to the console. So what it's suggesting here is that there's a way we can change this to, instead of being file to build just the one file, then we can change it to build all of the files that are in our directory. So we'll go ahead and do that. Folder. Okay, and the next thing it's suggesting here is that because we're no longer just building a singular file that will output the file base name with no extension, as it indicates here for the output parameter,
So it wants us to change that to basically a static name that will always be the same each time. So we'll follow along with that and do workspace folder, and we'll just get rid of all that. And then we'll just do hello world app. Oh, not app. And then we'll save as it says, Control S in most cases, somewhere in here. So we'll save that, and then we can delete, if I can right click the right thing, delete the old one, and then we can do Control Shift B again, and we'll see now we have hello world app.exe. And so if we added other files here, other C++ files, then we would be able to have it build all of those. So feel free to go wild, add in other C++ files or header files or whatever it is you want, and import them and try it out, and try and make something a little bit more complex than just the Hello World app. And you can see that it will build all of them. But then moving into the next piece is debugging, which is kind of the biggest aspect, right? Is simple debugging is always kind of a big thing for creating applications. So we'll follow this next step, which is talking about creating our launch.json file. So here it says to click on run and then add configuration. So we'll do run and then add configuration. And then as it says here, we want this C++ gdb/lldb. We'll click on that. It adds the launch.json file. And there's a few differences here that we can kind of see if we look a little closer from what they get from a default one and what we have here. So it may be that they just kind of already filled this out a little bit in their example, but me reading this would lead me to believe that this is just kind of how it was when they selected the drop-down option. But there's a few key differences here, because it even talks about, as we go down here, to change the stop at entry piece from false to true, which we'll go ahead and do. So that's why it leads me to believe that this is probably what it maybe default created at one point, and then maybe VS Code updated their default creation for this to something different. So here it's saying enter your program name, for example, workspace folder /a.exe. So we'll remove all this junk. And then we have hello world app. I almost did .app again. Hello world.app. I keep saying it too. Hello world app.exe. And then so we change stop at entry and then path to GDB. So it looks like they had already had this filled in by default. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up on my computer here. And so wherever you stored yours, assuming it's in the same place, we should be working with the same directory. And I will bring this up so you guys can see it. So here's my folder explorer. I've navigated to the C drive where min.gw was stored, and then inside the version folder, and then min.gw64, and then the bin folder as it says. And then we can see here this gdb.exe file, which is what we're going to need. So we'll go ahead and Control A and then Control C. So select all and then copy. And then we're going to paste that in here. And we're going to add gdb.exe. And we need to escape the rest of our backslashes. And then the other one is this pre-launch task that it mentions here to specify and match. And it even says here, make sure it's consistent with the task.json file label settings. So if we go to this, we have this kind of long spaced out name for the label. So we'll just do something a bit more simple, and we'll just call it build app. We'll do Control S to save it. And then we'll come in here and we'll add our pre-launch task and we'll make it build app. And we'll save that and then delete. And then we're gonna do Control Shift B again to make sure everything still works with building at least. And now it says start a debugging session. So before we do that, I'm gonna go in here and I already had a breakpoint set here, but you can set it wherever you want, but we'll keep it on here. And then we'll hit F5 like it says, and it's building it. And now because we put stop at entry like it said, basically this is, now we're into the main, so we're in the first point that we can break, so that's why it's doing that. And it'll just stop right here and before it even gets to my breakpoint. So if we hit continue, it goes to my breakpoint, and then as it says here, if we go down a little bit further, that we can step through the code, which is what we're doing. We can see the different variables. in this case, the vector message with all of our different strings. And so there you go. And you can go ahead and continue this. We'll remove that breakpoint, we'll let it finish. And then we can see here, hello C++ world from VS Code and the C++ extension, which is, if we get rid of this, as you can see, it's all there. So if you're trying to figure out how to use C++ files and debug them in VS Code, this is the way to do it. So a couple little adjustments I think we needed to make. There's some other things you can follow through here. I'll let you kind of do those a bit on your own, but we've got everything working and we've got it compiling and you can build it. So if there's any other questions or you want to go through some of this further along stuff to kind of play around with other things, feel free to follow along with this. I'll have this in the description below if I hadn't already mentioned that before. And there you go. That's adding C++ to VS Code. All right, so hopefully that video helped you out in getting C++ set up in VS Code. And like many of my tutorial videos, I'm learning that the tutorial videos end up taking quite a bit longer than I originally think they will, much like this one. I thought this would take probably 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes to cover, and then as you can see, it took much longer than that. So hopefully I'll have to set my own expectations for that going forward. Sometimes I just end up either rambling on more than I probably should. But if hopefully it helped you out, whether you're a beginner or a little bit more advanced, let me know in the comments section below if you thought it helped you. And I think that's going to be it for me. But as always, it's not it for you. I need you to go down there and hit that like button so I know that you like this video and that it helped you. And let me know if it helped you in the comments section below as well. And feel free, and as you've seen from this video, that it's, I definitely respond to the comments and I hear your feedback. So if you have a request for something that you would like help with, or that maybe a tutorial out there that wasn't very clear and that you'd like me to do a tutorial on, feel free to let me know about it in the comments section below so that I can respond to those. And then if you are interested in the React state management video coming up or any of my future videos, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon, and I will see you guys in the next one.